Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about things that we want to talk about around media and virtual production. Second hour is something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about online concerts and how that actually works. Tomorrow, we're going to talk more about the mechanics of office hours, which you saw just right there. Well, you won't see it now, but we were talking about that a second ago. And then on Saturday, we have education. Education is for 2 hours. We don't put that on YouTube, so you have to be here on Zoom to make that work. But at 10 o'clock, we're going to be doing a microbit. We will put that back on YouTube, and so we'll be building microbits together. So that should be a fun little lab. And then, of course, Sunday is general discussion about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So anyway, so stay tuned for that. And a reminder, we just put out in the email today a special link to our members from Stream Voodoo. It's 60 days for free for their Cinco. It's up to 5 people. We would love people to bang on that a little bit and figure stuff out. So stay tuned for that, and we'll go from there. All right, let's jump into the questions, Bill.
Our first one comes from Guy Cochran in Seattle, and he says, what does a professional audio mixer at the highest level use in their kits?
I'm on the wrong page. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Well, highest is one of those superlatives that we enjoy. It really depends, Guy. Are you talking about a field mixer or somebody who's mixing a concert or somebody who's mixing a live TV show? They're all very different, and you have to think about that. So why don't you fix it now?
Yeah, go ahead.
It depends.
Mitchell?
I can only speak for myself. I use a MixPre, a boom mic, a bunch of lavs, and I'm shopping for a new RF thing because I've got to update those.
Yeah, so mostly what we see in production is the Lavo. Lavo is a really high-end mixer. Audiotonics owns most of the other high ones, Calrec, Digico, SSL. Those are all the big mixers that we see at larger events that are actually used there. So if you're looking at a live event mixer, the Lavo, which is actually spelled L-A-W-O, and then Calrec, Digico, SSL, those are the ones that we usually look towards. Field mixing, of course, the only thing we see is sound devices, mostly in the field. I don't see a lot of other things. I hear about other things, but I haven't seen them. And then for consoles, when you're doing post-mixing, a lot of what we see is the Avid consoles. So Avid builds its own consoles that interacts with Pro Tools and a lot of other things, and those might be 20, 30 feet long. So those are other ones that you may want to look at the high end. Next question.
Zach Marley in Denton, Texas is up next, and he asks, working to create a hybrid workflow with live video in 30 frames per second and post-production at 24 frames per second, is shooting at 120 the only way to achieve this?
Go ahead, Noah.
I think the key word in that question is only, and it's not the only way to do it. You can definitely do some frame conversion. I would specifically look on your streaming software output, what have you, because you can do a plethora of different outputs. It's not like your destinations are limited to a certain frame rate. 30 just tends to be the standard for live streaming right now. So whatever you set in camera, going through your pipeline, that will ultimately determine what frame rate you want. And then you got to determine where you want to convert that. To the 120 question, yes, it could work. That's a very divisible number, and that should work. But not every camera can do 120. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it's just, I was just going to make the note that over the course of the last 15 years, there's come such a long way. When we used to have to do pull-ups and pull-downs in the old days as we were moving from analog and non-digital into the digital space, every time I did one and changed frame rates in post, I had all sorts of anomalies that I looked for. But starting about 5 years ago, I think they really got the math right, and it's much better. It is, of course, always better to shoot in a frame rate that is evenly divisible so that you don't have things trying to calculate fractional pieces, but it has gotten better, and I haven't seen something where I've gone, that looks horrible, in quite a while. So good for the industry.
I have all of it. So anyway, like basically you have to decide which is more important, and then the other one is not going to be very good. It's going to be okay. You can survive it. So decide you're going to do a basic 24 and then you're going to go up to 30, or a basic 30 and go down to 24. But one of them has to be your priority, and knowing that that's going to be the one. Now, most people will do 24 and then go up to 30 because they consider that the primary, it's kind of the film format. So that's the most typical, is to go up to 30. 120 is an experiment that a lot of us are playing with right now. The key right now with 120 is that it is we shoot 120 with a 360 shutter. So this is what we're testing right now: is 120 with a 360 shutter, and that means that you have the motion blur of 60, but you're doing 120. And we find with that little extra motion blur, we can use things like revision, real motion blur, to go back to 30 and 24 using the extra frames as a way to guide the motion blur. If you do the 180 shutter, what we find is that it doesn't resolve well. So you end up with a little extra motion blur at 120. We find that that's not really a problem at that frame rate. So something to think about. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer, Viera, Florida, is up next. Is there an outboard fader control device that works with Rogue Ameoba's Loopback? It sure would be nice to have physical faders for IP sources feeding a stream or into Zoom.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I didn't do my homework here, but I'm working on it. I'm looking at JL Cooper. They probably have the best shot at providing an external control device, jlcooper.com.
Yeah, I don't know of any. I just don't know what the interface is. Does it have an API that people can call to? I'm not certain. Next question.
Next one comes from Jeffrey Powers in Madison, Wisconsin. He says, which version of vMix have you purchased to successfully run your business, or do you use a subscription license?
We have a couple of vMix, and we were using the highest, whatever the most expensive one was. Like, I just wanted all the features that were there, but I haven't gone into the subscription. Now go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and I know I can get the $1,200 version, but what I'm really looking at the $700 version and seeing if that's for what I do, if that's all I need, or if the $50 a month is something that I would use, since I'm now crossing between different services.
Yep. Next question.
Eduardo Agustin in Panama says, do people still rely on business cards? I was producing a wedding and someone asked for my business card. Office hours, what are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Todd.
So I don't use business cards all that much anymore, but when I did, I loved Moo cards. And one of the reasons that I loved them was that they were kind of small. And I found that it would get me more traction if I had a business card that wasn't shaped the same as everybody else's, because then people don't put it in their wallets and they end up putting it in their pocket and it's annoying and they pull it out and see it later. So I think it's a balance between, is it too annoying or is it going to keep you a little bit more visible when you use it? So that's my offering.
Go ahead, John.
First, you have to watch the business card scene from American Psycho, and you have to use pale nimbus as the color for your business card.
There you go. Here you go.
No,
Mitchell.
so I use Haystack on the phone. Business cards are so 1970. You use Haystack; it's a digital business card, and you get their contact information when you send them your card.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm so 70s, John. I like business cards. You got to hold them the right side up. They find their way into people's desks. They're a reminder after you leave. It's not pushy in terms of your presentation, and people know what to do with them. And to Todd's point, I find that you must keep the same size, because otherwise they start falling out or they get misplaced because they're not fitting into the stack that everybody has a stack of business cards. If it's the wrong size, and it's not going to fall. It's going to be sort of like that subscription notice in the middle of your favorite magazines that fall on the floor in front of you.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Everybody your generation has a stack of business cards. But yes, I also used the Moo because you can do short runs and they can do unique things. And what you're really doing is creating your brand and putting it out there. So consequently, I'm using other items to get my brand in the hand of the other people that I want to get in touch with.
I have to admit, I think I have a stack of business cards. I think I've given out maybe 10 in the last 5 years. Like, it's just not something that I do very often. I usually we trade notes, and I just don't. I'm not as retail about it as some people. I just don't hand them out all the time, because then people will actually call me. The one thing I will say is that that I make my business cards the way I wish people would make them for me, which is black on white, easy to scan, easy for OCR to manage, because I take pictures of people's business cards, and the ones on white on black or complicated ones or really cool ones won't scan well. And that means I have to type it in, and that's annoying. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
My favorite business card is Steve Wozniak's.
Oh, there you go. I haven't seen it. It's good.
Well, it's all metal, and it's actually a multi-tool as well.
There you go. That's over the top. I did make ones. I had ones back when I thought that it was important. I had ones that were dog tags, which were really cool. The people loved. Everyone had them laying on their desk. It was a dog tag that had my information on it. Go ahead, Sky.
And as cool as this laminate is with the extra gloss on it, you can't write on it. And there's oftentimes you want to write something special to them to give it to them. So there's that disadvantage. But the Moo capability is you used to have to buy 500 to 1,000 of these that you never would give away, but you can do short runs of like 50 to 100. That's a new opportunity.
Yeah. Next question.
Tobias Moss in Minneapolis is up next. He says, I'm setting up a Discord server for a professional group. They're young rabbis. What is the best practice for setting it up? What needs to happen in the first 10 days to establish a good culture within the Discord server? And note, for many, this is their first time in Discord.
Go ahead, John.
We struggle with this too, Tobias, because we have one for Office Hour Space, and what happens is channel creep. And so by the time you know it, you got 100 different channels and you can't find anything. So be careful about channel creep.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Alex nailed it when we did. I remember, Alex, when we were trying to figure out something, Slack, Discord, whatever. And it was the first time I watched you put the brakes on things, like slow down, hold on, let's pick the right thing. And I found that very interesting because there was a lot. You were thinking, years ahead of most of us. And the couple things that you did right off the top was real names and be polite. And you have to be really stern with that stuff. So if you're not using a real name and in this community, if you're not willing to get on camera and talk to me, you're just noise to me. Just period. That's the way I look at it.
Go ahead, Todd.
A video tutorial for your people will go a long way, especially showing them how to change their nickname if they've named themselves something, how to do their real name. Number one. Number two, if you show up even in the voice channels, maybe schedule an event, send an event to everybody. The more you show up in the first 10 days, the more people will get used to this. And if you have a moderator or two next to you that are the three people who kind of get your vision and can make hashtags with you and really save it there and let the other folks populate and get used to it, I think that's another thing that could help a lot.
Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
The best tip I have would be simplify it for your folks coming in, your community coming in. With Discord, Slack, and all the other ones out there, you pick the one that best fits your needs in your community. And I always go with simpler the better. Yeah,
I mean, we're actually less in the past. I've been actually rougher about how forums work. If you look at you'll see some people, including my profile picture. We actually wouldn't respond to you in vBulletin and PixelCore when PixelCore was a membership. We wouldn't respond to you until you had your name, location, and a basically a qualified headshot, which was white, black and white with you over white, or actually over a light gray that matched the background of our vBulletin. And until you did that, no one, like literally, you could put up any question you wanted or put any comment, no one would respond to you. they just ignore you until you sorted that out, and they'd remind you that you hadn't done that yet. And we actually had a tutorial on how to do the headshots. I will say that it's great when people do that, but I've chosen not to do it here. But just because the culture here is much different. I mean, the culture has grown up. When we did it, no one really had social media, so it was all brand new. We could create whatever we wanted, and we just decided to do it that way. But the more you have real names, real locations, and profile pictures that are really you, the more people feel connected, and also the more accountable people feel. And then they tend not to say things that they would normally say without that. So the reason you go for real names, I wouldn't build on a forum without real names. Period. Like I just wouldn't do it. It's not worth the trouble. Go ahead, Chris.
So, Alex, in PixelCore, did you guys have like secret handshakes and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
You don't know what the secret handshake is?
I don't.
Yeah, there you go.
I know the gate code at 090, though.
Yeah, there you go. Next question.
Next question is from Tim Mann in Melbourne, Australia. He says, does upgrading to Resolve Studio unlock or add any audio effects?
Yeah, I think that it actually unlocks the some of the Atmos, some of the surround sound stuff is there. So I think that some of those processing tools are unlocked with Studio, along with some of the vision tools as well. So on the video side, but I think that you do need to use all the Atmos tools. You need to have Studio unlocked. Next question.
Next one comes from Eduardo Augustine in Panama, and he says, I've seen some people talking about Live App Pro's new drawing feature. This doesn't replace Alex's Telestrator technique, does it?
Yeah, so I did take a look at that because you asked the question early while people were talking. I went and I didn't download the app because it's $50. So it was so I did look at it, and I looked at some of the review. It didn't get reviewed very well, so I was also like, oh, I don't know if I'll jump into it. It does have a Telestrator piece, and it may work really well at $50. I'm not sure if it's enough. I mean, it does a lot of other things. But I use Mix Effect Pro or Here to Record to do most of those things. And so I wasn't interested in the rest of it. When I looked at the Telestrator, here's the problem with telestration in general, including the commercial telestrators. Too many buttons, too many things to think about. What makes mine work, in my opinion, is that I just go like this and it works. Like it's not, and I think that you can add a lot of features, but feature creep is really difficult when you're trying to present. So that's the real challenge. And it seems to have a lot of buttons, but I don't know because I haven't been able to download it because it's $50. Next question.
Next one comes from Zach Manley in Denton, Texas. He says, even with 48K being the standard, why is it that very few Dante mixers support 96K?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, I guess there's a diminishing returns for the higher and higher the bit rate goes for sampling. But with Dante, it's just a matter of channels. I mean, when you have more channels and less quality, or would you like to have more quality and a whole lot less channels? So it's just a sweet spot that they're looking for.
And go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where the capacity is chasing what people actually do. And I noticed it back in the days. I had a couple of debates with my audio friends about why video cameras still had relatively modest audio circuitry and audio components into it. They were thinking about things like 96 kilohertz sampling for getting fabulous overtones and everything else. And I was going, well, the stuff on the cameras is still really much, much lower performance than that. And I think what I came to the conclusion was that each industry has both workflow and quality as two concepts that are often always in conflict with each other. And at some point they decide that I can't give bandwidth to this, making this the highest quality because it'll impede my ability to do something else. Video is a little bit like that. And I'm not sure that many people hear the difference at 96 kilohertz of audio.
Yeah, the main thing is that they're not going to hear it in a live experience. Typically, the reason you want 96 is because you want more data to work with in post. So you record at 96, or you might master at 96, or master at 192, or higher bit rates. So there's a lot that you may do there to get more headroom. Much like you might use a really high resolution, you might shoot in log, or you might have something that's really high resolution in Photoshop. It's still going to end up as JPEG on the way out, like when you put it on the web or whatever, but it doesn't mean you want to start with JPEG. So in post, we want to have those higher bit rates. But again, like it was said before, there's an expense to it. So all the circuitry has to be upgraded to it. And what you're talking about is making the entire piece of hardware more expensive for something that almost nobody will use. So I think that's why they don't target it. It's a competitive market. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, I have a former client that didn't maintain their backup systems and just reached out to me to do an hard disk failure. Who do you recommend for hard disk recovery?
Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, we had to do a lot of this in Los Angeles for the film industry when we were going to from tape to digital. And the link I put in the Makana is the drive savers. They have clean rooms. They go in, take the disk out, put it into a new casing, and we'll do all the data recovery. Now, I think you also have to send a clean drive to put that information onto, but they won't sort it out for you. You'll just get the bits, and then you have to figure out all of those bits and bytes in there.
Yeah, Drive Savers is actually about 3 minutes from my house. So they're right down there. We've done a tour of it. It's amazing what they can pull, the data that they can recover. So the main thing is don't try to save anything yourself. As you start turning that drive, you're making it worse. If you try to recover it, you could be writing zeros over top of things. You just, if it's really broken, just, it's going to be expensive. So it better be worth it. It's going to be $5,000, $3,000 to $5,000 to get it fixed, but it's worth it. Next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia is up next with, what do you say to a presenter who says, quote, "You're the only people who put pressure on me to use a good mic, camera, and a wired internet"?
Go ahead, David.
They don't care about you as much as I do.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I think it's been said over and over again that the better your picture looks, the better you are going to be conceived or perceived in any meeting. You're going to be the top dog. You're going to be selling your brand. And I think that all these presenters that are pushing you also have good quality sound, video, lighting, camera, etc. So I think it's a situation where you can say, if you want it to look like this, you got to do the same thing.
Go ahead, Sky.
Now, George, I know you've got a history in broadcast media. So if you don't want to play your "I know what I'm doing" card, which sounds arrogant, tell them you want them to be the best first impression that they'll ever have. And so you are the new Taylor. You're the new Brooks Brothers, and you are helping them present themselves in such a way that they make a good first impression. So getting all of this out of the way is used to take a team of people, and that's what you are.
I'll go ahead, Jeffrey.
And depending on who it is, and depending on how they resist to what you say and do, ultimately I will say, "Hey, this is my show, and if you don't want to be on it, that's fine."
Okay. Yeah, Taylor.
I'm going to go with, I guess you call it the nice guy answer, and I'm just going to simply say, look, I'm simply trying to help you better your digital self and your presentation so you can stand out.
Yeah, I mean, I usually what happens when folks talk to us about that, we just kind of say, well, with quality comes authority. So do you want people to think that you know what you're doing or not? We dress up because we do that. We drive better cars because we want to show up at a client's house client's office and not something that is, we don't speak in front of a lot of people with jeans and cut off jeans and a t-shirt. And that's what you're doing, like in that area is, and there's a lot of other people that don't know how to dress up. I mean, you go to certain parts of certain things and no one knows how to dress up, so they don't complain. But this is the new, suit and tie. So that's kind of how we do it. And, and I usually view it, I don't push very hard. Usually I have a group of people that we're prepping to get ready to go. And we just tell them, well, we're prepping everybody else. And so they're all going to look really good. And you can decide, how you fit, whether you fit in. We just want to make sure that you look as good as everybody else that we're prepping. And there's a little bit of the, I got the other guy that robbed the bank in the other room, and one of you is going to talk first. And so that's a little bit of like, we just want to make sure that you're not embarrassed by how you look compared to everybody else in the panel. So that oftentimes has been relatively effective. And sometimes you just have to let them do what they're going to do, and the first event is a lesson. Next question.
Tobias Moss in Minneapolis is up next. He says, circling back to Discord specifically, how have you used roles? How do you assign them, moderators, reaction bots, and other options? And any other tips about using roles?
Go ahead, Todd.
So in my chief Discord that I manage right now, it's for my classes at my school. And I'll do it by seniority first. So second years get a title that are moderators. That the title is moderators. There's some people who do it according to Patreon level. If you have people that are supporting the channel, people I find enjoy having roles, and they enjoy identifying with something if they are playing a greater role than a normal attendee or participant. So if you can find those things that aren't off-putting and too hierarchical, I think that's how I look at it anyway.
Yeah, we don't use too many roles. I think that we have a couple admins, we have some moderators, and then we have one thing that we do have is that you don't have a role there's a role when you first come in until you put your name and address, or at least your name. I think full name you're in a role that can't post. so we make sure that so you have to get that updated, and every once in a while we get a little behind. Someone like pings me directly like, hey, I changed my name. Can I come in? so anyway, so we kind of hold that role is pretty important. That's probably the most important role, that and the admin. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Georgia next with what are the panelists' thoughts on the use of the application Canva?
Go ahead, David.
I'm a graphics idiot, so it's fantastic for me. If you're looking for basic, simple design pieces, built-in elements, it's really, really powerful. If you're looking for something where you can really get into the weeds, it's not going to cut it for you.
Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
I'm kind of going to repeat David here a little bit by saying I'm not a graphics guy, so it helps a lot on graphics. I've used it in a business setting, but never for video production. But it's a good thing to look at.
And go ahead, Jeffrey.
For me, it's a backup tool because I use Photoshop because I like to get in the weeds, as they say. But if it does have the pay version for it, so I'd highly trust it. Of course, it's Guy Kawasaki, I believe, is one of the founders of that. So I know it's not going to go away anytime soon. So I'll use it for a lot of different things if I need to.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Started by a female in Australia, I believe, and it's a brilliant tool. Because yes, as a founder, I did PageMaker, did Photoshop 1.0, did Illustrator, did Creole, what was it? Creole Draw, something like that. This tool allows anybody to create something and get it moving. And the professional version also has the ability to, now that we have to have the square, the the vertical, the horizontal, you can convert something very quickly, and you don't have to have Illustrator, Photoshop, know where all the clickety clicks are. And so it's cross-platform. I did things on my phone, created a poster in a matter of minutes, showed the client and went click, and we were advertising within seconds.
Yeah, the if you're doing something that's an odd format, I think that Canva could be really good. I mean, the most common thing that's delivered to us is Keynote. Like people just use, they lay things out relatively quickly in Keynote, and especially if you look at, there's a lot. If you do a search for Keynote templates, there's an enormous number of them, and they look really nice. It's not cross-platform, but it's very rare to run in. For mostly what I interact with is marketing teams. It's very rare to run into a marketing person that is on a PC. So we just get Keynote documents all the time. Next question.
Diane Reuter, it looks like in Omaha, says Apple peak performance. What could it mean?
I go ahead, David.
Please God, a peak performance Mac Mini. That's all I want.
All I want for not Christmas, but all I want for March. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, the fact they spelled peek as P-E-E-K, which means to take a glance at, I wonder if this is going to be one of the rare Apple times when they look a little forward and give you a hint of a roadmap as to where, particularly, I'm hoping the M-series processors may be going. If they have some news, if the fabs are ramped up for whatever's going to be the M2 or M Plus or whatever they end up in marketing speak calling it, and if they can give us any performance metrics, that would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Jeffrey and I had an interesting talk about this the other day. Jeffrey pointed out, I love this, Jeffrey, by the way, that Apple used the Mac Mini as the rollout platform for developers with the rollout of the M1. The question is, how different will M2 be when it comes out? And I don't think it's coming out yet. And will they need to do a similar kind of rollout thing? Now, the fact that they're changing the whole chip architecture, probably not, but it was a really interesting theory. I don't know. I'm still counting on a pro level iMac before we get a Mac Mini.
Oh, I think we'll get pro level iMac. Maybe.
Because
or maybe both.
Now, the other thing is, like, the iMac Pro, if you will, that was a stopgap machine. That was right after Schiller came out and said, yeah, we kind of screwed up the Mac Pro. Sorry about that. We got something really cool coming out, but it's going to be a while. Mm-hmm. Oh, but we have this cool iMac. So they may not do another iMac Pro. I hope they do, but that's just what I want. It may not be best for the shareholders. I still think they're going to finish upgrading everything to M1 before they start the cycle again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that what's interesting is that I think that they don't have to go to M2. I think they could go to just getting the Mac Mini at par with the MacBook Pros. I mean, like literally, there's a bunch of us that would buy a bunch of Mac Minis if they just put the Apple ProRes chips in, put the faster, like just let us have what the MacBook Pros have. They would sell a lot of Mac Minis, and we'd be totally happy. We'd be like, this is great, and you could do the M2, next year, and so I think that Apple's pretty good at kind of maintaining their pace, there's no reason for them to rush into something new when they can just upgrade it and make us all happy. So I think that they might do that. The Peak, I just wonder whether it's AR. When I saw Peak, I was like, ooh, and so most of us have kind of not been certain that we would see anything like that. I also think that we might see an upgrade to the Office apps. So we'll see what that looks like to tie into that Peak. So go ahead, Bill.
Well, it is interesting to me. I mean, when they came out with the new Mac Pro after their difficulties with the one previous, it was so modular. And then I thought at the time, it's, they're starting to build something where you can pull out one module and put in another module. Now that they've got the new processor M series and they've got things like Infinity Fabric that allow for hugely fast bus speeds across things down there at the chip level, at the system on a chip level, really, then what does that mean in terms of upgradability? And there hasn't been much. So that's been a surprise to me. So I'm wondering if they're re-architecting some of that I/O stuff and that could be something along with the M1 series, but or M2 or M3 series or whatever they come up with. We'll see.
Yeah, Jeffrey.
And to add to what Chris said, I think the M2 will not, if they do an M2, they're going to do it at WWDC, not at this event, because then that gives them about 6 months to do the development for that to whatever machine's going to have an M2 at the end. I think we're also going to see better 5G, and we're going to see Wi-Fi 6 get implemented in this next thing because they need to move on forward to that.
I still think 5G is a bit of a pyramid scheme. Anyway, Mitchell?
Yeah, the Mac Pro is nice, and it's cool to have all that interchangeability. But I think if you did a survey of everybody that has modularized it or added things to it, that everybody's doing pretty much the same thing. And I think the M1 Mac Mini is saying, this is our flavor. You can change the memory, but do you really need all that expansion? Can't you do that through Thunderbolt? So something's got to come out that's going to sort of bridge the gap between the Pro and the Mini in terms of modularity.
Yeah, I don't think it has to come out anytime soon, though. I think that the fall or the next spring the fall. They said 2 years, so most likely they have until fall to put out the Mac Pro. I don't think that there's any rush there. I think really what we're looking at is a push between possibly new iPads. A lot of times the spring is the purchase time for the schools in education. So what we'll probably see is something that is aimed towards that. That's why we might see something in Keynote and Pages and Numbers. We also may see something in the iMacs and Mac Minis. I think that's usually because it's the last time they can show what they have before schools pull the trigger. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine back in Panama says how to ensure good quality audio on a YouTube live stream.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, it's just signal chain like we've talked about before. So start with a high quality mic as close as you can to the source, working down the line, preamps, right? Going to your interface into your stream, right? And so I would also suggest specifically with YouTube, you can do a primary and a backup encoder, right? So you can send 2 identical streams. That way, if you have a problem with one, you can fall back to the backup.
Yeah, Mitchell.
Garbage in, garbage out. It's just like the video. You need to have as good a quality audio you can feed it, and don't push it too hard. I know Alex likes to go right up to 0, but if you clip it, it's going to really sound bad after it's gone through their compression scheme.
Hey, go ahead, Sky.
Well, I was going to refer to you, Alex, because you say test, 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 and you set up an ancillary YouTube channel so that you can do exactly that. The private, you can figure it out. You can break things.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are, for a live stream, you definitely want to see it on the stream, see how it's going. Number one complaint for your live stream will be that it's too quiet. That is the number. That's why we push it pretty hard and why we'll continue to push it up. We're probably going to go. I've been watching how we've struggled. A lot of people struggle to get, because of some of the mics, getting to -20. So we may retreat back to negative 24, back to the Mickey standard of 24, to give us more, allow it to be a little easier for our panelists to get there for some of their mics. One of the reasons we're doing that is because we no longer are going through Zoom directly to YouTube, or we're about to, we are. So basically I can bump the volume, in the back end. So I don't, everyone else here, I can make it easier for folks here. So that's the other key, is to try to figure out what makes the most sense for each person, without overmodulating, without having other issues. And so the number one thing that happens number one audio problem is wireless mics. So that is the number one thing that you'll have problems with. You'll have breakup in the wireless mics. The next thing is going to be ground loops. So you're going to hear a buzz somewhere, that ground buzz. The third thing is going to be gain staging. So that means that you've got, one thing is overmodulating and the other one isn't getting enough. And that gain staging may be in your wireless mics, but those are the big three. And if you look at those, and then after that, it's like environment and bad mics and all the other things. But those are the things you really want to try to clip if you can. And then the big thing is, do not change your audio chain after you've done your final rehearsal. Like, that is the one that gets everybody. Oh, I'll just make a change. Like I have a better idea now. No good ideas, no new ideas. Like you just like, once you get your audio chain, when you do your last rehearsal, the last time you stream to YouTube, everything's going to stay the way it is, and any good ideas will be in the next event, but not on this one. Next question.
Next one comes from Roscoe Jones in Brea, California. He says, one session at the HPA, the Hollywood Professional Association, in Palm Springs recently covered the Super Bowl halftime being purposefully shot with larger sensors and a DP, director of photography, to achieve a more cinematic look. He's got a link there, and he said, did any of the audience notice?
Sky.
Absolutely. And again, that platform is going to try new things because they're one of the biggest draws. Consequently, they can sell $6.5 million 30-second spots in a 3 to 4 hours period. That's a huge moneymaker. So they're always going to try to find the next new thing. Now, will it last? 3D glasses, multiple 32 cameras coming across, giving you a different vision of a event. I don't know, but because it'll what's its value? But I guess I jumped in because, Roscoe, if you got to go to that HPO, I'm really jealous. That is the mecca of geeks and film in the same space.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, but did it look good? I think that's the question, Sky. I thought this year's halftime show looked awful. It looked like it was shot on 2/3 inch chip cameras. I didn't see anything that made it look any better. I thought the set was borrowed. I thought the lighting was atrocious because it was still daytime. I thought the performances were okay. The floor, what were they doing on the floor? I thought it was one of the worst looking halftime shows in a long time. I don't think it looked good at all.
I definitely noticed that it was a Super 35 sensor or a larger sensor because there was certain depth of field things that you don't see on a 2/3 inch chip. I do think that it was a good example of, putting, 150 pounds of content into a 50-pound bag, and that's really the challenge. Is you want to do the Super Bowl often has this problem, is that it's not specific to this one, but the Super Bowl has an often problem. Like, let's add a bunch of people to it, and then we're adding all the ideas instead of executing.
About performers, right? Add a bunch of performers.
Well, add a bunch of performers, or add a bunch of, we're going to go here, and now we're going to go here. Even like if you look at the weekend, the year before, we had there was so many different set changes that I don't know if were completely necessary, and it got a little disorienting, and so I watch them because I'm always interested in what people are doing in live production. But the ones that I think are the ones that make the most sense are the ones that don't do as many things and do them really, really well. And so I think but I think that's a really challenging thing for people to do, oftentimes, so.
I think one of the better ones in recent history was just a few years ago, Justin Timberlake. He did about 6 sets, maybe more, and they were awesome. So it was one guy, basically. I mean, he has a good band. But and the other thing is, it's because it was pre-COVID, they could put a lot of extras on the stage. As it turns out, that stage is about the size of a football field. But like there was like, it looked like maybe 30 people out in front of the thing. I thought it was anemic and sad.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Bill. Real quick.
So there's a mini doc on YouTube about the weekend's halftime show that I thought was particularly fascinating because they really do take you behind the scenes, not just through the planning, but through many of the limitations. Now, this was different. He did his in the stands, essentially in a fixed set. But I learned things like whoever's doing the halftime show gets one rehearsal on the actual field. That's it. And it has to take place like a week and a half before the actual show because the groundskeeper will not let that field be touched in the interim. Right. So it's interesting to see some of the requirements for them that causes these designers to have to make just compromise after compromise to get this running off. Right. Fascinating production look.
Well, and that's also why I would tend to be, I work on a lot of live shows where people just put too much into something that where the viewer will be more engaged if you weren't confusing them as much by doing so many things. And that's something we can probably talk about in the second hour. Anyway, but I think that's the challenge. But I did like the cameras. Next question.
Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland says, I'm looking at these mast camera solutions for my rugby coverage. Camera choice aside, what are the panel's thoughts on these systems? And he's got a link there. Actually, he's got 2 links there. So
my view of them, I took a look at them, is they look really cool, and we were waiting for reports from you. Like, I've never used these specific masks. Usually when on the stuff that I've done, we have risers or scissor lifts or things on, they're much more, there's much more infrastructure. And if you look at like an NFL game, you'll see these huge tracks that are back there that they're in a platform for the folks. And so that's what I'm actually more used to. I've never put a camera just on a mast to put it up there. I don't know how stable it would be in wind and so on and so forth, but it looks really cool. And I definitely want to, if you get one of these, I definitely want to know how it works. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia is up next. How can I provide lower thirds for House of Worship in a Zoom meeting? I'm able to be a co-host. I need to provide 4 lower thirds.
Go ahead, David.
So I hope I'm going to answer this correctly. To create the lower thirds, you could use Keynote, you can use Canva, Photoshop. There are lots of different options. To actually deliver them, unless you want to go the Zoom ISO route, where you're pulling the individual video feeds out, feeding them back into some sort of broadcast or streaming system like vMix or Ecamm or OBS, and then back into Zoom, there actually is a really sort of simple way to do this built right into Zoom. So if you go into Zoom and you click on your account management and then account settings, and you skip down to in-meeting advanced, and then scroll down just a little bit underneath virtual background, there's a section called virtual filters, and you can actually create the lower thirds. You can put them right in here, and then you can have a number of different ones, and then people can put them up and they will show up as an overlay on top of your camera feed into Zoom.
I was today years old when I found out that existed. That's a really good tip. Noah.
Excellent. I was going to say that was the answer of the day for me because I didn't even know. I was going to suggest either Atem Mini and using that and overlay it there before it hits Zoom, or to use OBS and do a virtual cam, but that's a way better answer. Yeah,
Mitchell.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Noah and David. I like that. I would use New Blue. That's just a program that's been around for a while, allows you to build them in advance and stack them up or link them to a database.
Right. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg. Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany is up next. A new 32-button Streamdeck arrived on my desk. It turns out that at the same brightness, the color of the buttons is significantly less saturated than on my older 15-button model. Has anyone have any similar experiences?
Go ahead, Todd.
I totally misread your question, and I was going to bring up the brightness control, and I have failed. Jeffrey?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So we had a question a couple of weeks ago about whether you buy the older or the newer Streamdeck. I went down the rabbit hole on this. There's been a couple teardown videos I've been watching, and I've talked to a few people about it. The buttons have been improved on the 32 and the newer 15 button because they started to implement things like screensavers. and they needed to have better refresh rates on them. So the ultimate answer is yes, they are better buttons, if that matters to you. Congratulations on the 32 button Streamdeck.
Next question.
Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina, up next with, is it possible to use my Streamdeck or Monogram controller to trigger autofocus on my Blackmagic Design Pocket 6K? I think I'm the only person here without an Atem Mini.
I was about to say, I think you can do it through the Atem Mini, and then I read the rest of the question, and I was like, oh, no, you can't. The only thing I would try is to see if there is some way to activate it from the Blackmagic or one of the other Bluetooth apps that you can get that you can load. So that one of the ones that talks to the camera. And if not, we should all find a smaller one. Probably not Blackmagic; they won't listen to us. But find somebody who is a smaller company that's making one of those Bluetooth ones and ask for a keystroke that would do autofocus. And so that's what I would experiment with now. Now I need to figure this out because it's a really good idea to be able to do that. Next question.
We're back to Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland. My new camera choices for rugby are a Sony AX-53, a CX-625, or a CX-450. Currently using the CX-250, so they're all an upgrade, but I'm leaning toward the AX-53 since it's 4K and the rest are only 1080. But I've read its HDMI out isn't clean. Any thoughts about that?
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, so you're dealing with a lot of cameras that have smaller sensors, which might work for your application. It's not a bad lineup of choices, but I do have an alternative for you here. So I'm showing you an older camera. It's called the FS700, which is also a Sony. Cool thing about this camera, it's a super 35mm sensor, and you do have interchangeable lenses. You can get it used for a fair price now, and that is going to be a lot higher image quality, and I think a better bang for your buck.
The only difficulty with doing Super 35 on sports coverage is keeping focus, because it's going to be a shorter depth of field. So normally almost 100% of the time, and I used to own, I think, maybe 10 of those FS700s. So we used them a lot as webcams. That's actually what we used them for. So they're great cameras. So I definitely agree with Noah that they're a great camera and a great value. The hard part is that this is one place where you might want a smaller sensor because it's just hard to hold focus when people are running. So that's the challenge there. I wouldn't unless you're really going to use the 4K. The problem is you're stuffing more bits into the same size sensor, and so your 1080p is going to have better low light performance as well than it does with the 4K. Next question.
Vixenise in Lowell, Indiana says, I need an audio out from the Atem Mini Pro, but it only has HDMI out. What's the best way to strip out the audio?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Little boxes that you can buy that will de-embed the audio and give you a separate output. I don't like the connectors on. A lot of them use the little mini plugs or RCA, both of which need to be bounced back up if you're using a mixer.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion too, or go through another interface or television or what have you. But I know how to do it with SDI, and then there's also a stereo out that comes for HDMI, plus it has an HDMI output. And then finally you have the RCA, which is what Mitchell just mentioned as well.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
Mark Fisher in Minneapolis, Minnesota is up next. How do I know when to retire and replace media like hard drives, SSDs, and camera SD cards?
I think that the big thing is that hard drives will last a long time as long as you keep checking them. Like as long as you spin them up, they'll last for years. There's a point where it's not so much that you stop using them, but you should stop using them for primary. So remember that an SD card will last, again, a long time. It's built for that. I've maybe never had an SD card go bad, and they get too small because they're old, and the new ones have a lot more storage. The SSDs, one important thing is that they're only built for 150 insertions. So if you're using them as a tape deck for your hyperdeck or whatever, know that after a couple shows you should probably not use them as your primary format. And we've definitely had failures in that area. And then the hard drives, again, as you spin them up, we've had ones last for a decade, but I don't depend on them after a first couple of years. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before in the past, but I think it's worth mentioning. One of the first things that'll go wrong in a hard drive that's been sitting for a long time is what's called stiction. The spindle just gets dry almost, think of it like that, and it just doesn't want to spin. So you hit it with power, and it just goes, yeah, I don't want to be a hard drive anymore. And so I do a technique, I call it turtling, where I'll turn the OEM drive upside down on the table so the circuit board is pointing up, and I just spin it. I just give it a spin on the tabletop, and then you stop it. And the fact when you stop it, the inertia of the drive will make it kind of break loose from that spindle. And I'll say 9 times out of 10, you put it back in a sled, power it up, it powers up just fine. So it's that stiction thing with a physical, what do we call them now? Rusty spinners.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
So for me, the only thing, because I agree with Alex that SD cards tend to last forever. Drives do tend to go bad at odd times. The only strategy that I universally employ to just give myself a little help is every time I buy a piece of media, the first thing I do is use one of those Sharpies that's in silver or something like that to write the start of service date on it. So at least I can keep track of how long that piece of media has been in effect. And I use that across all SD cards, all the rest of the cards and drives, so that if something gets 3 or 4 or 5 years old, I start looking at it with askance, and I try to think, how soon do I need this? Is this critical? And if it's critical, I try to replace it immediately.
Yeah, let's go to the next question.
Moving on to Paolo Sa in New York. And she asks, with photography, I seem to remember 85 millimeter being the best for portraits. Is this taken into consideration or even applicable for office hours video standards? If yes, are there settings to compensate since the cam is so close to us on our desks?
Go ahead, Noah.
You can definitely try to keep an 85 on your camera. You just obviously have to distance yourself. So I'm in a 10 by 10 room and I'm using a 35 mil. We did this a few days ago where we all just kind of checked our distance between us and the camera. Obviously having a larger sensor will help with that too. So you can have, a tighter focal range on a larger sensor and still not be super tight on us. But I think roughly our frames are around a 35 mil equivalent.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes from Zach Marley in Denton, Texas, and he says, I found office hours because of Dan Tepfer and FarPlay. Is anyone still messing around with this tech?
Go ahead, Todd.
I am. I'm scheduling rehearsals with it coming up, but I might be the only one. Anybody else?
I'm definitely interested when it has 64 channels. Like I'm dying for a 64 channel solution. I'm not a musician, so it's hard for me to do it, but 32 or 64 channels would mean that I could transport some stuff that I need to transport. And so I'm super excited about when he gets into multi-channel. And my problem mostly is that I just don't have, I'm not a musician. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm just commenting. That was one of the most fun shows I participated in as a part of office hours. So I would suggest that everybody who's watching go back, search the archive, and look up Dan Tepfer's show here. It was fabulous, and Todd was a huge part of that.
It was stunning. So the thing is regardless of whether you think you'll use FarPlay or not right now, and I think that you should check it out. If you're a musician, it's amazing. What he's doing there, but around all of that was an incredible performance with graphics from somebody who made all of it. It was just like crazy show. I would highly recommend checking it out. Next question.
Zach Marley in Denton, Texas is up next. And he says, is anyone using the Constellation with a Dante or Madi bridge in production?
Oh, no. It's a poorly implemented Madi. So Dante it doesn't support. And the Madi is, I believe it's 32 in or 64 in and 2 out. Like, you're just kind of like, I don't understand. I guess that you could deliver to it, but it was, we have a bunch of Constellations. Love the Constellation. They still haven't figured out the audio. Next question.
Eric Price in Kansas City says, are the YouTube live streams being archived in a new location? I'm wanting to rewatch Jon Snyder's presentation from Saturday for a couple of PTT features I was unaware of, but the videos aren't on YouTube or in Discord.
I'll go ahead, Jeffrey.
So anything from last Thursday, Friday is on this new YouTube channel I just put into Discord. Anything before that is going to stay on the channel that it was previously. And then, of course, if you want to also find out where newer videos are going to lie, go over to the website. I also put that on in the Mukana link there.
Yeah, go to John.
I watched John's presentation on Saturday. I thought it was very well done, Alex. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on his presentation.
I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, I had to skip through it because I've just been really busy as always, and so I skipped through it, and I thought it was really good. It's definitely one worth going back and checking it out. He did a really good job. Next question.
Boarding Religion, Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana, says, the secret sauce for live video is interaction. Can we all agree that the secret sauce for cooking is aged balsamic vinaigrette?
Go ahead, Todd.
No, Chris, we cannot. My heart hurts. It is this.
What is it?
It is Lao Gan Ma Spicy Chili Crisp.
All right. Choose your side and let the battle begin.
Yeah. All right. I would say butter. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany, olive oil. Why does the sensor of a camera have such an effect on the depth of field? Isn't it all about the lens?
Go ahead, Noah.
All right, let's see if I can explain this well. So ultimately, the lens is the destination, right? And your lens passes light through all these different elements, and it ultimately hits that sensor. And so your lens projects light onto that sensor. And so if the sensor is larger, it basically correlates to the aperture, which lets more light in. And so the projection is also bigger. So basically, that's the correlation between the f-stop, right, or your lens and the sensor. So they work together to create that depth of field, shallower depth of field or deeper depth of field, what have you.
Yeah, one thing you want to think about is you want to think about the size of the sensor. And there is only, when you think about there's only one place that's in focus. Like literally there's an infinite moment that it's in focus. And the main thing is on this pyramid, this triangle that goes back out to the surface, how wide is the angle of this triangle? So as the sensor gets bigger, this triangle is wider, which means you go from being in focus to out of focus faster. So it's question, is it measurable? When the sensor is small and you're doing this, you can go up that triangle a lot further before you get to a point where you see it in the frame. It was only in focus in one place, but it's where on that triangle you are. And so the smaller the sensor, if it's a little tiny sensor, it's really long. And so what happens is that all of this you just don't see it because it's the triangle's too thin. So when you have a really big sensor, that triangle is really wide, and this is much more noticeable, much faster, because you're going from in focus to out of focus faster because that angle is there. Next question.
David, looks like Gusmao in Brazil says, any advice for a good channel strip to use compression and EQ for voice-only streaming? And he's got a TLM 103 mic and a Mix Pre 3.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, you didn't say price and where your thresholds are, but I use for voiceover work, which is behind me, my studio for that, a Neve 8801. It's extremely good quality and borrows from the famous Neve sound. Rupert Neve designed it. The 8801 sounds just like butter to me. But there are so many different devices that'll do what you're asking, right down to the DBX. I think it's a 100 series that'll accomplish that for you.
Yep. Next question.
Next question is from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. He says, who knew John Preda was one of the grandfathers of streaming?
Go ahead, Tony. Okay, Tony, are you there?
Oh, you're muted, Tony.
Apologies. I want to thank John Preda for being on Conversation with Tony Mobley last night. It was a great conversation. If you have not seen it, please go and watch it. Amazing information last night about John Preda. And so I want to thank him for sharing that. And if you really want to get some insight into who the Rocket Man is, I encourage you to watch that conversation.
I got to listen to a little bit. I was like, we got to have John talk more about Bitcoin. Like after I heard it, he said I could talk for 3 hours. I was like, we got to give John the opportunity to talk about it for 3 hours. So we're going to drag John into a longer conversation, maybe an after-hours session about Bitcoin, because it seems like he might know a lot. So anyway, we'll check that out. All right, next question.
Albie in San Antonio, Texas says, Alex, I know you're an expert in Keynote slide decks. What's a good resource to start to get a template? And what are the solutions if it has to be converted to PowerPoint? Do all motion and transitions need to be redone?
Yeah, so you have to do everything over again if you're going to do it in PowerPoint. Don't try to move things. I'm mostly moving PowerPoint to Keynote and then have to fix everything to make it work. So I will admit that there's a lot of places that you can do a search and you can find lots and lots of Keynote templates. I don't use any of them. My templates are very sparse. They're generally over black or white. And I'm doing the have objects, because what happens is a lot of times I'm giving a presentation and I want to draw on it, so I don't need it to have anything else. I'm sitting there like basically doing a presentation, and then I'll be circling something and I'll be going over here and this is how this works, and it lets me create an active experience for the person watching, and I do that every day, like with keynotes, and because of that I want my keynote to be as sparse as possible because I don't want it to conflict with it. So it's got objects and it's got ideas and it's got diagrams, but it just kind of does the thing that it needs to do, and I try to keep it as simple as possible. But if you need it to look like something, there's tons of great template companies out there that are doing great ones, and I would just do a search for keynote templates before I did anything else. All right. We are now going to change gears to our second hour. So we thought we've talked about this a couple of times, but I think that it's worth continuing to bring it up every once in a while because it's something that is going to be very topical over time. So I think that, we're seeing a huge shift in, post-COVID behavior. Where people are still some people are super excited to get back to venues and be part of live events, and a growing number of people are not. And so it's like, how do we figure out how to tie that in for our panelists? As I'm working through this, definitely raise your hand for the panel discussion if you want to just say a couple things before we jump into the questions. But I think that it's going to be a really interesting challenge. I ultimately think over time, and one of the reasons I wanted to hopefully have a discussion about it is, I think over time, online concerts are actually going to become massive. You're not going to be playing for, a handful of people over Zoom. You're going to play for millions, and that all feel like they're part of that conversation. And I think that I'm super bullish on where online concerts are going. But I think that, we're still in that kind of growth phase. Go ahead, Todd.
So, I'm watching this closely too, obviously. Yeah. Now about 2 or 3 years ago, I moved up here to the country, and I'm touring less. So I'm not looking to go right back on the road any more than I was 3 years ago. But I do notice all my colleagues so happy to be out and so happy to be traveling, so happy to be on planes. And it's all great. It looks like everything's coming back to life. At the same time, I thought one of the things I might share for this panel discussion was the group that I'm most closely affiliated with, which is called Bang on a Can. It's kind of a weird music organization. You might call it avant-garde classical or new classical, although we're fairly traditional at this point. But early pandemic, they made some choices that were very strong. We've always been known for doing marathons, like 6-hour concerts or sometimes 24-hour concerts at major venues in New York and around the world. So what they chose to do is they did these marathon concerts online, and they started a streaming channel, and it's going up through an Amazon server. It's just, it is their own infrastructure. And what they did for that was they made a couple of things really clear. The stuff would not stay up, but it would be a live concert experience. You would either be there, you were not, you would enjoy it, or you would not. They wanted to make sure that the composers and the performers got paid, and they paid us all. And they were all premieres. It was a marvelous thing in the middle of pandemic to have this kind of oasis, and they jumped to really quickly. They've continued this, and in fact, tomorrow at noon, or I think it's noon, First Fridays with Robert Black will be this one. My dear colleague, who's a bass player, actually uses an Atem Mini on the floor with popsicle sticks attached to the buttons. So I can find a picture of that somewhere for you. But that's how he does all his camera switching while he's playing the double bass. He's amazing. Anyway, this is, excuse me for that. Sorry, I need to just give you this because I do want you to see it. This is their website. It's called live.bangonacan.org. We'll put it in Mukana. And they're really publicizing everything quite quite well, quite beautifully, actually. And they're also charging for these concerts. However, they are a pay what you can type of donation model. So this is something that I've seen a lot, is the kind of pay as you can. And from what I can tell from Bang, from Dan Tepfer as well, this has been going great for them, because there are people that will come in and pay $5, and there are people who will come in and pay $300. So it's a real wide berth, but it has been working for them from what I can tell.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
That's very, very cool. To me, and I hate using these terms almost because I hate pigeonholing people into one or the other, but I have noticed from my early days in radio and things like that, there are people who lean more introvert and people who lean more extrovert. I ran into it a lot when I was dealing with the sales forces on the radio stations that I worked at. The creative people were kind of over here, the salespeople over here. And I was lucky enough to make some friends in that group, and they would take me on some of their sales calls. And I realized that they just are the people who want to go out in the world, want to press the flesh, want to sit down and take you to lunch and look at you across the table and do things. And then there are guys more like me who would prefer to sit in a studio and make things all day long, and I don't really care whether I have interaction every single day for 3/4 of the day. Now, with all those things said, I do think this is the era where you have to be both. And I think when you look at the people who are musicians, who I've known who have had any kind of even modest success, they manage to mix those two things. They have to do the creative art, but they have to do something to get out there in front of people. I am hoping that we are going into the golden age of the people who want to create in their private space, have these new access pathways. And I think that's part of what Office Hours is helping people do, so they can reach larger and larger audiences and sustain themselves more robustly doing what the part of this that they absolutely love. That would be delightful.
For some reason, I'm really obsessed with the idea that XTC could finally do a new live show for the first time in 40 years. You know, like I'm slowly working. I figured out where they, I'm not stalker or anything, but I do know where they live. And so and I, what city, I don't know exactly where they live, but I've been like, how do I get a trip where I can access, cause it's just, so it's a thing. I know that Daria is new to our back end, so I'm just going to throw it to her and let her say a couple of things without her. She'll figure out the hand thing, but we'll just have her just jump in.
Should I just raise my hand? Thanks.
So many new
Thanks
tools.
so much.
Yeah,
Yes. I know. Seriously, you guys tidied up the place. It looks amazing around
and
here.
And for those of you watching
awesome.
who doesn't know who Daria is she's the OG. Like when it comes to doing online concerts, Daria is really the OG of our group. So anyway, go ahead, Daria.
That is so sweet. Thank you so much. Well, when I saw this coming up on the calendar, I was like, okay, Alex, I'm coming in. And I'm so excited to jam with you guys about this concept because as Alex knows behind the scenes, this is what I'm obsessed with right now. It's what I've been obsessed with for my whole career, really. And I think just to kick things off, I wanted to jump in and say that I think there's this misnomer that I hear everywhere that is it IRL, in real life, people touring, people going out to shows, or is it there's energy still in playing at home and playing online? And I think the concept that these two ideas are diametrically opposed, that they're fighting each other, that they're different camps, is completely the wrong way to think about it. And it's really funny, like Todd, I see Todd nodding. He's out here with me on the streets, he knows. When I talk to people who aren't musicians, who don't understand this space, and they go, well, everybody's going back out again now. And I say to them, well, okay, imagine you're a new artist, nobody knows who you are, and you have a few songs that you like. You want to go play out live. How are you going to get anybody to come see you? And so there's this concept, I think, where these two things flow into each other in a more beautiful way that works for musicians and fans. And that's something that doesn't really exist yet, that the people are playing with these ideas, I think. But I think it's great that people want to go out. And I think that we're just, like Alex, I'm very bullish about, I think we're just at the very beginning of the dawn of what could be possible, of what you can do from home. And I think the way those things can dovetail will be exciting.
Yeah. And I think that I think one of the challenges is obviously the audience interaction, feeling like you're looking at the audience and feeling like that's there. I think that is where Zoom really makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that I'm hoping that they continue what they're doing, which is increasing audio quality and everything else that they're doing. But I think that the artist has to be able to see them. I think that you can, one of the things that I'm playing with is the idea that we stream a native stream to a platform like YouTube or a private platform, but there's a group of people that the artist is actually playing to give them that feedback that's coming in over Zoom, and now the quality is high enough that it actually, that group of people that are interacting, so that, because I think there's an energy there that otherwise can be lost. You were going to say something, Todd?
I was just going to amplify what Daria said, just to say that for a long time, for the past couple of years, we really had no choice. And it's kind of an interesting thing that choice was made for us. If we wanted to perform, if we wanted to connect, there was kind of one way to do it. And now the thing that has changed isn't that we're going back to some former normalcy, but now we have the distinction of real choice about myriad ways that we approach and try to engage with our audience.
Yeah, and I think that it also is one of those things that it can be part of a tour, like you're going to do, but I think that eventually, I think the trajectory is that bands will go to less cities, like big bands will go to less cities and do more online as that monetary process starts to figure itself out. Because eventually the monetary process from the online events will be bigger than the in-person. Go ahead, Sky.
You didn't leave me much following that, because the thought I had that I can't seem to get out of my head is if a tree falls in the wood without anybody there, does it make a sound? Well, of course it does, but we as artists need to hear that response. We need to have that feedback. Now, how is it happening in the improv of a concept? It's a yes and of an opportunity. And now that we've been forced, this pandemic has created a flattening of the earth in many ways and forced us into new ways of interacting. I think we've gone way outside of that comfort zone of doing it the same old way. Now, Sunday mornings, I'm starting to attend, an experience that it feels good to be connected with the people that I've been connected with for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Now, moving forward, I'm going to go with Daria's yes but I'm still also going to say, yeah, that tree falling still makes a sound, and it needs its feedback in some way.
Again, I think that's where I think putting literally large screens of people in front of, and we've done that with Daria a decade ago, where she's looking at a screen of people where she can play to, and I think that Zoom now can make that even much bigger. If you look at what's happening down Canvas down in Monterey, they have an upcoming jazz festival. I've been thinking, we got to figure out some way to get some jazz musicians in there and just fill that whole space with people, to see what that looks like. But I think that response can actually be done. It's the latency becomes really important, and then there's this issue, so hopefully we're going to do more, more in that area as it goes down the path. But I think that the other thing we're dealing with, and I know that I'm dealing with personally, is that I already had a propensity for not being that excited about being around a lot of crowds for a whole variety of reasons. And I notice every time I go out that it's amplified. Like, COVID has amplified a natural tendency to not be super social, to not wanting to be out at all. I go out, I go to very specific things and I go in and out, but I go out of my hole and I go do my thing and I come back in, and I find myself extremely uncomfortable around large numbers of people now.
You may be too close to yourself, because you as an introvert is so opposite of how you present yourself on screen.
I am very extra. I mean, I'm very connected over this. I'm very introverted in person. I don't, and it's a very different, and you'll notice that almost all of my interactions with folks is, and I'm only saying this because, again, XTC, Andy Partridge he just can't interact with a lot of people. Like, he would get stage fright and everything else. And it was a real problem. And I don't know whether this fixes it or not, but I'd pay real money to watch XTC play out of their studio in the UK, like real money, just to watch them hack. They don't even have to go create a concert. Just turn the studio on and start fiddling, and I would pay $300, to watch that, And so that's the thing that I think that artists, and I think that that's where we also have to think about breaking up the idea of a concert. I would pay session artists. I would pay to watch session artists come up with songs in a studio by themselves, they don't have to create a concert. Let me tell you, I would like to hear you try to do Metallica, Enter the Sandman as reggae, and just watch, just watch the machinery start, and everything else. And I think that, but bands coming up with their, I think that studios recording studios could be potentially homes like Todd's and Daria's, but also studios themselves. Recording studios could be the next stages. You have great audio, you've got a great little space, and now you can take that space and project it out to potentially millions of people. And I think that's a really powerful place to be. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So as a local musician in a working band, it's really nice to find. In fact, as we're talking, my band leader is texting me saying, hey, can you do this date? Can we do this date? Can we do this date? So we're starting to really ramp up on our shows here. But the bigger problem is that the venues that we normally went to in the last 2 years have shifted and even closed. There's I can think of 4 offhand that we would normally play that no longer exist in our area. So we have to find other ways to do that. In the meantime, my lead person, he's actually been doing a lot of online concerts solo, and being able to promote for that helps in keeping us going as we go. As for bands coming to town, when I promoted clubs, the one thing that bands did do was when they came for a show, they would always the lead band would sometimes go to the local TV station and play a song or two to promote what was going on. So those people that they don't normally reach, they'd be able to come in and go from there. But the one thing that I've been noticing is a lot of bands that are now going to things like South by Southwest and seeing how that goes. And I'm not ready personally to go to South by Southwest. I think it's going to be a really big mess. And if there's going to be any type of super spreader that's going to happen at this point, it's going to be there. But it'll definitely be a good test of how we're going to be doing bands in a larger scale.
Go ahead, Chris.
If you think about it, going to a concert it's about gaining access. Like, let's face it, musicians are cool. And if we can hang out with musicians, we feel cool. The last big show I went to was to go see the boys play in Dublin, Ireland at Croke Park. It was like 120,000 people, but I had no access to the band. I was just one of a thing. And sorry, Sky, I stole your word there. But if you look at a small online thing, it's real access. Like, I may actually get to talk to Daria in between songs. And if that's a possibility, that's super cool. Like, that seems fun. But the flip side of that is crowds beget crowds. And if you think about just your typical rock show from the 50s, 60s, 70s, where you had the big act, and then you have the opening acts. And the opening acts were there to kind of give added value to the show, maybe to a certain degree to kind of ring out the system so the main act sounds good. But it was a way of being exposed to other artists. I remember going to see The Police in 1982, and it was a Bill Graham Presents. And if you're not from the Bay Area, you may not know who Bill Graham is. But Bill Graham was a major rock promoter, and he was a master at getting the giant headlines and then the up-and-coming opening acts. But the thing I keep going back to is the access. And I loved what Daria said about having it's two sides to the coin. I can have these intimate shows to build my audience, but then you can go out and have the real interaction thing. I keep thinking about the access. I want access to cool rock and rollers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead, Daria.
Yeah, I totally agree. Todd, we're cool. Chris says we're cool. I
say it, it's true.
No, you're cool, Daria.
No, you are cool. Trust me. I watch all the Todd shows.
Love fest.
I love hearing what everybody's talking about here, and I think it's so thrilling, right? It's really cool to think about all of the elements and like the puzzle pieces we have to play with now, all of the tech that's available, all of the cool things that people like Alex are doing, and the things that people like me and Todd and, who have been out here playing with what's available, what we're dreaming up, and one of the other things that occurs to me is, and I'm sure maybe Todd and other musicians watching have noticed this over the years, there's this prevailing archetype of the musician that we have the starving artist, you have like the kid busking on the street, like hoping toss a coin to your witcher, like someone will throw some change in your guitar case. And then you've also got like this deadbeat drug-addled loser who's always on the road and who's like just totally strung out and like unhappy. And I've been dreaming about a near future where these archetypes are so lost to the past that there's a new normal where you could be a musician who's not just a superstar or a loser in your basement, but what if there was a real musician's middle class where everybody who loved to play music didn't have to play a million gigs and be on the road all the time or become a professor or a teacher? Like, what if you don't want to be Ariana Grande or Billie Eilish? You just want to do your thing and you want to be great and you want to play all the time. And I think some of what we're dreaming up and what's possible now could open up the possibility where 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, when someone says, oh yeah, I'm going to be a musician, nobody goes, oh no. They'll go, oh, cool. And you'll have a nice family. You get up in the morning, play a show, make some breakfast, hang out with your kids, play another show. I think there are cool possibilities here.
And I think that there's a bunch of limitations to what Patreon does, but I think that they're the first tip to what we see there, where there are some bands that, like, the one that I always come back to is The Warning. The Warning are three girls out of, whether they're women now, but they were girls when they started, like 14, 12, 9, started doing heavy metal out of Mexico City on their own. And they are now, like, you go to their YouTube channel, they are doing big videos, and they are, and they're generating a lot of revenue, from what they do. And they are doing what they love to do, the way they want to do it, how they want to do it, and I think that is something that we want to keep on looking at, and to your point, and it's building that. They always say that you only need 1,000 people that really like what you're doing to make a living, and I think that they have more than that, and I think that I think that there's some discoverability issues, there's some interaction issues, there's a whole bunch of things that Patreon's a little challenged with. But I think that it is the first, like, when you look at some of these artists, for the ones that have figured out how to turn that key, I think that they've been really, really successful, at doing that. And some of them, it just pays the bills, it just pays some of the bills. Some of them, they're doing better than most of us, they're, doing what they're doing. And so I think that, that's a really interesting model of looking at how we have, again, whether it's Patreon or not, but how do we have people who are interested on an ongoing basis of interacting with us? And I will say that I grew up as a music director. So I was a music director, and a show for me was backstage, before and after, hanging out with the band, doing the thing, and then going to see the show. And I did that 1,000 times in a couple of years, that was my whole life. And I found that I couldn't go back to the big concert venues. Like, when I got out of the industry and I was out long enough that I wasn't going backstage, like, I didn't know somebody who knew somebody that would get me backstage. And I was like, this isn't very fun.
all the coolest stuff happens backstage. Yeah.
Well, I saw U2. Someone had free tickets to U2. So I saw, they said, hey, do you want the extra tickets? And they were in the nosebleeds, which is what most of them are, right? By number. And I was like, this is why do people pay for this? Like this is, I'm way in the back. I see the iMag is like way off in the distance. And the iMag is the image on a screen, and I was like, this isn't like worth going to, And so what I think is the opportunity for artists is to be able to play and create an intimate space, but for 1 million people. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but the idea that every person feels like it's like a little concert for them, and I think that we've seen that here, with Daria, with Todd, with when we had the FarPlay session with Dan, with Brian Van Ars. I have a friend, Brian Vander Ark, with Peter Hillman, where we had these great interactions with artists. They're talking about stuff and then playing this amazing music. And I think it's been some of the best sessions that we've had in office hours have been the artists that came in and played some music and interacted with us. And I think there's just a matter of figuring out how to scale that up. Go ahead, Chris, and then Taylor, pretty quick, and then we're going to jump into the questions.
I think there's this huge opportunity in being that next, I'm going to call it the digital Bill Graham, and I realize that's a localized thing, but somebody needs to take a bunch of Darias, not that there's more than one of you, Daria, but a bunch of digital, I'm going to call it, make the class of digital performer, and have like a festival so that they're bringing their audiences together and cross-pollinating and learning about what other people are doing. I think there's a huge opportunity there.
I definitely think that virtual festivals are going to be a thing. Go ahead, Taylor.
I experienced a virtual concert or an online concert, and like you and many others, Alex, I probably will never go back to the big venue. And another reason why I'll never go back to the big venue is because my mom used to work in broadcasting, and I always just get backstage passes and free tickets. And seeing that experience compared to the online experience, just being the average Joe in the big concert venue in a seat, just don't really seem interesting to me anymore.
Go ahead, Tony.
I just want to say that I was messed up by the remotes and Daria's collaboration the last time that was shared. And I'm looking forward to more music like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump into and Bill's out. I'm going to answer. I'll just answer the questions here. So the next question is from Michael Forrest in London, UK. And he says, how can we avoid playing to an empty room if we don't have a huge mailing list or social media following? Go ahead, Todd.
So I really, really want to leave a contribution on this one because I feel this pain. So the first thing I say is spiritual. When I first came to New York, I was playing with really famous people in a little club called the Knitting Factory, and sometimes there would be 3 people in the audience. So I know this, and it may be sometimes 2 people in the audience. The thing that I think we forget, but that works better than anything else, I hope Daria will back me up on this. If you don't have a huge following in a spot, but a few people, phone calls matter a lot. So phone calls are actually reaching out to people very personally. I remember when I first had my first band, the return on an emailing list is like 3%, I think. So you send out 1,000 emails, you may get however many people. 3% is 3, or 0. But that's the mailing list. If you call 10 people, you might get 6 out of that. Because they respond. So anyway, that's an option that I'd like to lob over to you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
And as I said a little bit earlier, is when bands come to town, they'll book side things. They'll book TV appearances. They'll book if you're not that big, you can go to like a local radio station and play for them. Give them a couple tickets to give away or anything like that. Getting that local promotion as opposed to an online promotion, because those are 2 different things. Mm-hmm. And people still listen to the radio, so they might listen to you and say, okay, I'll take the chance and come down and check out your show for the evening. But the promotion is the key to being in any city and doing a lot of it. I remember the story about Randy Rhoads with Ozzy Osbourne. He would actually go every town that he visited. He'd actually find somebody that was giving lessons. It didn't matter what their skill level was. He would go and he'd get a lesson from that person. At the end of the lesson, he said he'd always learn something from him, but more important, he'd give tickets to the person that gave the lesson to come to the show. So he'd gain instant fans pretty much for life on doing that. So small little things like that will pay forward easily.
Yeah, I mean, my job at one point was a marketing rep for Sony, and so my job was to drive the bands around when they came into town. That was part of my job. So whether it was Living Color or Alice in Chains or Indigo Girls or Toad the Wet Sprocket, Ned's Atomic Dustbin, those were all my bands, and the bands that loved to go out and go to these. We had record launches at the at record stores. They'd come in and do signings and so on and so forth. And then they'd go to a concert, then they'd do an interview, and they would have done the interviews in print ahead of time. But I think that a lot of artists who are getting started who aren't signed don't understand the machine. Like, don't understand that there is a machine there. Like Sony, had people like me all over the country. I think I was one of 50 or 60 that were just focused on college music. And so it was not, and so we were the little team, like we did the little bands, and those bands, some of those bands became really big, like Alice in Chains and so on and so forth. But that you have to be part of that machine. And one of the things that made my shows work really well was the mailing list that I built over time, and I used every opportunity to get people's way to contact them back in, and I could magically have hundreds of people show up anywhere because I had a mailing list. But I had to that mailing list isn't something that you just contact people and tell them. I wouldn't send anybody anything that wasn't of value. I wanted to make sure that every time they saw a postcard from me, I only used postcards because I was cheap. they'd flip it over because it would be 30% off something, or buy one, get one for tickets or something. But it was like real value every single time I touched them. And I think a lot of people forget that. Like nowadays, they're constantly tweeting out like, hey, check out my show. Hey, do this. Hey, do that. Hey, do that. You're constantly using up karma credits that you're in debt. The karma credits are something that when you're providing great shows and when you're providing lots of useful things and when you're doing out that, you're building up that you're amassing that karma, credit, and then you use it when you ask someone to do something. So you have to be very careful about how you set that up. Go ahead, Daria.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing that it's 2022 and we're talking about local radio and mailing lists and Billy Graham? Like, I think it's fascinating. And I also think there's so much we can still learn from, what was going on back in the day, how these things worked. And, Alex knows we've been having a lot of fun conversations back channeled. And one thing that I'm fascinated by is I think there's this whole group of music fans that gets overlooked. And I've been calling them just tastemakers. And there are people on the internet who are obsessively in love with music and new music specifically. And like, I'll just say for any of the musicians watching, like if you don't know about rateyourmusic.com, like this is hilarious to me. It looks like barely even Web 2. It's like Web 1 of a website. But there are these incredible music fans running this website, and they write essays and love letters to the new albums that they listen to, and nobody's paying them to do it. They're just really excited about checking out stuff that's new. And then there's, great YouTubers like Anthony Fantano and The Needle Drop, and there's Rick Beato, and there's all sorts of people. And so like, as sort of slightly next gen from the Billy Graham era, like that's where I hear about new stuff a lot of the time. And I think again, it's like, how do we tap the things that existed before, the things that exist now, and pull these things together so that new artists aren't like, where's Alex and his van to drive me around and get everybody to come? And like, I think it's interesting to think about.
Yeah. And it is something that we're committed to in office hours. We stalled it just a little bit because I felt like the quality of, before we got to 2.0, I felt like, I was very happy that we got Todd and Daria and the other artists that we've had on here. But I felt like I needed to get to 2.0 before I start inviting more artists to come in on Thursdays, because I wanted a higher quality audio and video and everything else to do these, because some of them turned out to be a record. Like when I really felt like, and I have to admit, I'm old enough that I knew who Brian Vander Ark is. Like I literally just sent him a message over Twitter, just like, hey, do you want to come on my show? And he's like, sure. And I knew that I could do that a little bit during the pandemic because people aren't touring, and he was great. And it was that when he did that first one that we did, because I think he was pretty much the first one that we really brought on for that. It was amazing because it was like he told us the stories behind his songs, and he did it. And what I realized in that format, by the way, and we repeated that format with Peter Hillman and with Todd and with Daria, is play a song, talk for a little bit, play another song, talk for a little bit. And I think that is really using that interaction. So it's basically, and the model that I have really is MTV Unplugged. Like the unplugged experience with the band, I think is a really great concert of really interacting with the fans and talking to them for a little bit and then going back into it, because that's what we never get. If you go to a concert in a big concert, they can't do that because there's too many people. But here they can get questions and so on and so forth and be part of it. So next question is, Bill, are you back?
I am back. Thank you for the break here. I had some things to take care of. Taylor Sunderhouse from Cincinnati, Ohio says, please recommend a good paywall for online concerts or any of your online events.
Go ahead, Noah.
We've used Eventbrite before for that paywall. And what's nice about that is they manage all the credit cards and all that information, so you're kind of protected for that. I've also used Vimeo. They have a service built into their system that helps with that as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, we were in the process of working with on Zoom as a process, but understanding as artists, we have a certain set of skills. As business people, you need business people because they bring skills to do the next steps and the processes and the percentages that all of these different services, including PayPal and connecting the links together. So it's a continuing exercise of finding friends that have better skills than I do.
And go ahead, Jeffrey.
And for smaller artists, I've talked about this one before. It's called Street Jelly. It's a great way for people to get online and show their stuff. They can get tipped via token systems. So you basically buy the tokens and you tip them from there and then go from there. I'll put the link in Makana.
Go ahead, Todd.
Eventbrite is kind of the leading one, I think amongst us. But remember always that the straightest shot that you have to anybody who you're listening to, who's listening to you, sorry, is an email list. So if you do have an email list, one of the things you can do is if you do set up a Stripe account, you can use Eventbrite or something to like just collect emails and advertise your gig. Discovery's not that great on Eventbrite, but you can use some way to advertise your gig, but then take in that money and then provide an unlisted YouTube stream for those folks. And that can do it. It's a little bit of extra effort, but in some way it kind of connects you directly to your audience.
And another thing, if you get serious about it, definitely took a look at the Vimeo OTT and app tools. So Vimeo has a lot of ways of kind of setting those controls up. But they also have subscription models that can work inside of it, and they'll build an app. I mean, it costs a little money. It's like, but a lot less than building apps. Like I build apps and they cost a lot of money, and Vimeo charges you a little money, and then you can have your own app on the App Store and so on and so forth that will manage. You can have a variety of VOD as well as live. So you might want to check that out as well. Next question.
Gavin Roberts in Chester says, "Hi guys, I produce a lot of online concerts and I was wondering what's the best way to monitor streams across multiple social media outputs at once. Is there some sort of multi-viewer for RTMP or social media broadcasts?"
Go ahead, Noah.
I have not seen a multi-view RTMP pull-down system. That would be amazing. That's super interesting. I've done two different ways of doing this. I'll have multiple computers up with different streams. That way you can monitor, mute one, listen to the next, make sure they're in sync. The other way of doing that would be a multicast platform, right? That outputs. And so it will pull in the metadata or the information from comments and different things so that you can monitor that in one place as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
I've simply done it by just, empowering a team, have a person dedicated to monitoring each platform and then report issues as they see it.
Yeah, I mean, the most common thing when we're doing streams is almost every platform that we're supporting, we have a different computer, and a lot of times they're little computers that are basically filling up screens or multi-views of all of those things. And so we do it with hardware. I don't know of any software way to do it, as Noah and Taylor talked about, but we do it all the time, and it's every platform. So how does it look on an Android phone? How does it look on an iPhone? How does it look on an iPad? All those things. And during a stream, we're bouncing between all of those to make sure we know what it's looking like. We don't stream that many things. We've talked about this in the past, to many platforms all at one time. We usually try to find the platform and then use the other platform. So you might have your after show in Facebook, but your pre-show in Instagram or Twitter, and then you have your event in YouTube or Vimeo or whatever. And so you use all these platforms to keep on building that following. But that's, Next question.
Gavin Roberts in Chester's right back with, "I've been asked before, but also what's the long-term solution for DCMA copyright? So many bands have their content pulled even though they're supposedly whitelisted by the platform."
It shouldn't happen if it's properly. So there's a thing of things appear random when you don't see all the variables. What has to happen is the copyright owner that is recognized by YouTube has to clear list the channel and potentially the event directly, for every single song that's there, and they have to do it. Or they can go. There's a global clear list that I don't know if the individual channels have, but it's possible. And so, but you have to be very, very specific about that. Just to put it in perspective, like Coachella, for streaming takes almost a year to get all of that sorted out. Like there's the agreements, and then there's all the tech and everything else. The last 3 months is getting all the clear listing done. And so it's not a trivial problem. You can't just go up there, even if you think you own it. You have to be the recognized copyright holder of that content in YouTube's eyes, which means someone's registered it. And the easiest way to know who registered it is to build a test account in YouTube and put it up and play it, and you'll get flagged. And when you get flagged, that's the owner. And sometimes you get flagged by 3 or 4 people. Those are the people who say they own it. So then you have to chase that down. But that's the way we usually smoke it out, is to put something up and get flagged. And then, but don't put it up on your main account, because if you get striked, getting strikes is very old fashioned, but still possible. It just tells you that the band is not very smart. they've had too many days on the road. Anyway, so that's usually what happens is you get flagged where you get demonetized, and that's fine. But put that on a test account, figure out who it is, then you gotta go after them to nicely. I mean, you just have to contact them and figure out what's going on. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana is up next. He says audience engagement is a critical part of the equation, but what about audience follow-up for the next event, and how do you determine how often to have the events?
Go ahead, Todd.
So I think it's equally important. And doing it via the internet, as long as you have people's email addresses, you can actually write a thank you note. And when I do, often, if I do a concert online and I've got people's email addresses, I will send a thank you note. If I'm doing a concert in person and I see people that I haven't seen for a while or did not expect to come to the concert, I will reach out to them via email the next day and say, thank you for coming. It was great to see you. So any contact you can have is super important. How often we have the events? For our event, my event with our team here on Office Hours, we have to kind of schedule in advance. On March 12th, we're doing every other week for a music show, starting on March 12th. So I think scheduling in advance, I think every other week is kind of good, or every week can be good. Accidental Theater was every week for a while, and then we switched it for every other week, Alex. And we did it all sorts of different ways. So I think it can be really flexible how often you do it, and that doesn't necessarily have a direct relationship on the success or less success for an event.
Go ahead, Daria.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, my version of that is most of those conversations go on in the DMs, of whatever platform you're working with. Social media is like very integrated to this stuff and is very important. And Alex knows, I'm very partial to these kinds of concert experiences where you're actually interacting with people face to face, whether they're, people that you know already or not. And so you get a lot of instant feedback that way. But I think this is a really good question because this is something that I think a lot of musicians ask themselves. And I think one place where people get kind of tripped up is like, how often can I ask my audience, if I do have one, to show up? And how often can I ask them to pay? And there's this weird thing of like, you can post whenever you want on social media, but then if you want people to show up for something and you don't want to bug them too much. And again, I think these are some of these tricky, hairy things that we all have to think about and deal with. And, when I was doing it like all the time, I've tried everything from like at the beginning of last year, I did a live stream every day for one song because I was like, maybe I can get this like, I wanted to try frequency because in the past I had done just super random, like whenever I felt like it. And I would end up waiting a really long time and then doing these like really long live streams that were like 6-7 hours long, trying to get as many people as I could to watch and make it an event. But then I'd be stuck and feel like, I can't do this for at least like a month because I made myself have to go for so long, and then I had everyone showing up for so long. So I've tried everything. Doing one song every day was really funny and really, really hilarious and hard. Not as hard as going for 8 hours. But I think experiment and try things out. But again, I think you find your way. You need to find a little happy medium. Yeah.
And I will say, to go back, the most successful format that we've seen is to play and talk, and to actually have it last over 30 minutes and less than 2 hours. Like that's that's been the ballpark of the stuff that we've worked on, is because it actually takes time for the audience to warm up. So literally the problem with short live events is that the audience doesn't even know it exists for up to 5 minutes. So if you're doing a shorter one, the problem is they might be just getting there. and then they, one of the things that we want to do as far as office hours is, we have about 8,000 people on the mailing list now, that are there, and that's not the daily mailing list. That's the overall mailing list that we use very sparingly because I'm a mailing list guy. But the daily one goes out to almost 4,500 people. And what we want to do is start using those daily announcements and so on and so forth to make sure that if we're when we're doing concerts and so on and so forth, can we make sure that there's 50 to 100 people in the room, and that gets into the crowd, and making sure that you have someone to play to. And we want to use that often for artists, and so that's going to be something that we're going to really start to focus on as we go into the new year. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So yeah, that's creating the conversation. The continued conversation is always a great way to do it because then people feel like they're in the know, they're part of the loop and things like that. I like the fact what KISS did, and they created an army. And when they created an army, they created a street team. And every time that they went to a city, they had their street team take care of how they would handle their promotions, and they would reward their street team with trinkets and shirts and stuff like that. And it was a way of giving back and getting back as well, and creating that continued conversation and continued community to things. And I see a lot of YouTubers do the exact same thing as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm fascinated by as we continue to talk about NFTs is the potential of doing, signings and so on and so forth, and then making those NFTs. So where I'm going to give you, not sell you an NFT, but I'm going to sign my album, or I'm going to sign this concert graphic for you. And it's kind of that signing thing that you do for the first, certain number of people that come in, that you're signing these different things, and then you're sending it to them as an NFT. I think we've waited for NFTs to get less expensive, but if you're a paying person, it could be kind of a fun thing to give you some kind of a memento. I tend to call it artifacts, that you're getting artifacts from your experience. Next question.
Next one comes from Jason Panks in Nashville, Tennessee, and he says, will online concerts be produced and performed from home or from a studio?
No, go ahead, Bill.
The answer is yes. They will be from there and from outdoor on the sidewalk and from every other place on the planet. Thankfully, technology is helping us in that way. I will say, as somebody who turned a hay barn into a studio over the course of a year and lived there and worked there for many years, what you're trying to spend the money to give yourself is consistency and control, particularly control. I mean, if you live someplace relatively quiet and you're going to be producing concerts and have open microphones all the time, you don't have a big problem. If that same studio is near the L tracks in Chicago, when there's one going by every 20 minutes, you might have a different circumstance. So we throw money into those kind of problems to allow you to turn on your microphone, turn on your studio, and work when you want to. But that can be complex. But boy, I've been watching some of the Playing for Change things that are on the internet, and you see people all over the world in every culture, in every place, managing to make music and create their art and put it out for the world to see. And I'm sure there's a lot of back end to perfect it, but it's magnificent to be able to see that. So don't let anything stop you.
You go, Noah.
The ultimate question is, does a studio provide value to the artists or its customers? And I think it still does in some way. Obviously, you can do a lot of stuff at home now, which is great too. But there's an ease of use to have stuff already set up and ready to go, right? There's less technical things that you have to worry about if you just show up in a studio and it's ready for you to go. But there is an advantage too. There are a lot of great artists doing home setups, and they have amazing setups at home as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Well, and he's in Nashville. There's probably more studios in Nashville than there are 7-Elevens because of the music industry there. Consequently, the connection between you and your audience, I think, is what you want to ask about. And to Bill's point, they had a good microphone. They may have been on the street, but you could hear them, and there was a video playing them. So again, it takes, how do you connect? I'd love going into studios. That's where I started, but now I'm doing most of this from a 12 by 12 space here in my home. So,
I mean, the first thing, if I owned a music studio, the first thing I would do is figure out how to do live performances out of it. Like, I mean, it already sounds great. And we shot out of, in the past, we've been in like Alicia Keys' studio with her doing an album thing. We've done, John Mayer in Village Studios down in LA, which was a great space. And all we did to change Village Studios for the John Mayer event was we took all their lights out and put little light balls that screwed in. They were just round, and we just filled the whole ceiling with them instead of the little spotlights that they had. Now it's a big soft light. It looked really nice. We had a couple directionals and everything else, but it sounds amazing because there's a Neve board, that's sitting there, so you're playing the whole thing through a Neve. And so, and all we had to do was add cameras. And so the thing is that those are music studios should be figuring out how they set up their video pipeline and making it look incredible, because they are almost perfect platforms to stream from right now. Go ahead, Daria.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, as home musicians, as people who are at that level, like, this is one of the most important things I think you can invest in too. Like, I see it as being two different levels. Like, you don't have to just go out and play in a venue. You can go out and play in these studios as they start to wire themselves up, but then also have your setup at home and be ready to go with your camera and your little ring light and your thing. Get a couple of pieces of gear, and then you're set up and you're ready to perform for potentially millions of people, like you said.
Well, and again, I think that there's a lot of artists that have shown us, ways to. I mean, again, some of them are just opening up to their recording sessions and they're fiddling around and letting people see them work through what they're working through and
Isn't that
listening
cool?
to it.
I
People
love that. I'm
that.
so glad that you love that just as much as I do, because I think anything going on behind the scenes with music is fascinating, and I'm a musician and it's still mysterious to me. I will watch anything about the making of the music. So when I hear you guys love that too, I get so excited.
Well, I think now 4 years ago, we were streaming some of the recording stuff that the Pomplamoose did with they were streaming it out of just them in the studio with session artists, and you had Natalie and Jack and then the people that they attract, to that in LA or they hire to bring in to make that happen. And it was just magical to watch. Like, to me, it was just, that was like, I could watch that all day. I was like, we were talking about building a whole channel that's just studios, just artists coming up with doing the thing, like watching the gears. I was like, I could watch that all day. Go ahead, Todd.
What Daria said, of course. And also, I mean, you're looking at my recording studio now, so I'm in it. And the other thing that I've gotten to do because of office hours, because of Alex, because of all the fine folk I've met here, is I've been able to really bring Tlaloc and my friend Luke in and do video stuff and do like really weird stuff. And it's gotten pretty sophisticated. We should do a behind the scenes sometime really soon with keynote presentations. However, it doesn't have to be that way. Yes, Dan Tepfer has FarPlay. You can play with other people and be very, very tightly in sync. But if you don't have that, there are ways just on a Zoom call to bring friends in who do graphic design and to work with you and to play in the sandbox of making larger creative material than you've made before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Eric Price in Kansas City, and he says, did anyone see AJR's One Spectacular Night concert in December of 2020? While a live concert, it had effects that made it more like a Broadway show with very effective use of production techniques and channels for audience participation.
I don't know if I saw it. So I know I didn't see it. It's not that I don't know. I don't know enough about it. It sounds really great. I think that and I'm sure that I'd love to hear people's feedback on it. I'm finding more and more, I've been doing online concerts now for over a decade. A authentic connection with the artist playing is all you need. And so you get event producers who want to do things really complicated. They want to make things crazy. They want to have big lights. They want to have things explode and everything else. And what people really want is to get connected, and that you just don't need most of that other stuff there very often to make it work. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Eduardo Augustine in Panama, and he says, how can an artist make a better online concert experience? Is there any expectation on making it more interactive? I recall Rihanna's Fenty Beauty clothing line release. Was different?
Go ahead, Daria.
I think that Alex and I are two of the biggest proponents of making your concerts as interactive as possible. Absolutely. I don't know what he's referring to with the Fenty launch. If I remember correctly, that was just kind of like a fashion show. But connecting with your audience, looking into the camera, doing this thing, finding this intimacy that does exist through this screen where suddenly you are playing for people as if they're just like sitting right at your feet. And you, like Alex said, talk about your songs and share the little moments. You will find that you make fans for life and friends for life. And it really is life-changing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, what I would recommend against, we've done a lot of these, is putting some of your fans in the room with you. It is when you are playing and you're playing to a camera with a Zoom right in front of it or whatever, your fans are in the front row. As soon as you put one person in front of you, your fans are in the back row. Because it is immediate. And every time we've done it, we've just watched the fans, the view times drop by like 10x, like not like a little, if they paid for it, they might stay a little longer, but it devastates. Like, all these artists really want a handful of people in the room. And so they fight for it. And I just keep on trying to warn them. Sometimes they're big enough that I can't tell them what to do, but I just go, you just got to get that the number of people viewing is going to drop like a rock if you put anybody in the room.
And I think as the performer too, not to just jump in, but Alex, I remember we tried that once in the thing we did in Times Square for me. Yeah. And it was the only time we did it. And I know we both felt it. My heart was split in two. I had these people in front of me and I had the people on the screen that were my loyalist fans who I knew I needed to play for. And as a performer and as a human, now you've got billions of years of biology telling you to look at the people who are directly in front of you physically. And it splits your attention and you just can't divide yourself in half like that. So I agree with you. One or the other.
I've done, hundreds of events, music events at this point, and it's a law at this point, like a law of physics, not like a law of the United States, but like a law of physics it's going to ruin your event. So go ahead, Jeffrey.
So the Rihanna thing, I'm thinking about that. She's catering to two audiences. She's catering to the music audience and to the fashion audience, and so being able to interact with those people, that's got to be twice as hard, if not more. The bigger issue when you start interacting with people is kind of like the kiss cam effect at a sports event. So you have people on the big screen, they're being tempted to kiss each other and stuff like that. There's some people that just don't want to be on that kiss cam. And so you start putting people onto the screen, you start calling them out, and then they're realizing that they're being called out, and maybe they were working that day, skipping work or something like that. So that can be a good thing, it could be a bad thing at the exact same time.
Go ahead, Sky, real quick. We're running out of time.
Well, you kind of took the question in a different direction. I was going to say you need a team, but it sounds like you're talking about a more of an unplugged experience, and consequently, it is much more intimate, and you can probably do it by yourself.
Unplugged is like 40 people. So, like MTV Unplugged is like 40 people running that event. So it is. Good point. It is still a team, like a person. You can pull it off by yourself, but you can pull it off by yourself, but you have to know to do it really, really well. It still takes 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 people to execute the event. If you look at what we do with Tony Mobley's show or the Belfast Method or whatever, you get a sense of that. That's it. We're going to cut through these really fast, just because we're running out of time. Next question.
JJ McKenna San Rafael says Taylor now has a different role at his radio company. Have there been any additions to interfacing online concerts to radio in this era?
Go ahead, Taylor.
My new role as a senior engineer at iHeartMedia or iHeartRadio. Their online concerts are essentially the artist is performing in front of a studio audience in LA, and in it that performance is being streamed online, video streamed and rebroadcast on the radio. And like everybody else, they're trying to figure out that connection or that interaction piece. So they keep adding and moving things around.
Yeah. Next question.
Tommy Shans in St. Paul, Minnesota says, are there any repeatable places to go for A&R for up-and-coming and mid-level artists?
I don't know of any. I don't know of the perfect place to do that. I do know that good A&R folks are constantly floating around. So if you create where there's smoke, there's fire. So if they see someone, pulling up to do that, I think that's an interesting thing. But I don't know if there's any specific place to do it. Next question.
Daria Musk, who is from Earth, says, how does the panel feel about live video stream concerts versus metaverse concerts with avatars?
I'm going to go with Jeffrey real quick.
I do the live stream over Metaverse. I actually wouldn't do a concert over Metaverse unless you did something super out of the box that nobody has ever done before, and then stick a Metaverse stuff to kind of finding out what your fans are, do one-on-one conversations with them, and maybe one song, but just keep it as low-key as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think people want to look at people.
Yeah. Go ahead, Taylor.
Daria, respectfully, I'd rather see you physically, not a animation version of you.
Yay.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
How do you do metaverse concerts, Daria?
Yeah. So it's something that you're starting to hear people talking about, and you see like Fortnite and those kinds of things, like making giant avatars for some of the bigger stars. And it's a friend gave me an Oculus, so I've been like checking out what's going on in that world. And as somebody who's interested in this space, a lot of people are asking me this all the time. What about metaverse? What about the metaverse? And so I've been checking it out, and like, dude, what's happening right now is rough. It's like open mics of like legless strange cartoons doing bad covers of Alicia Keys. But yeah, I'm just glad to hear. I sort of wanted to know if my instinct was in the right place by doing a gut check with you guys. My instinct is that people want to look at people, especially when I'm watching musicians. I want to watch their hands and their eyes and their lips, and I want to see what they're doing. I don't want to watch cartoons. So that's just me.
Yeah, I really think that people. I mean, I go very analog a lot of times when I'm doing stuff where I'm doing something digital, but I don't like virtual backgrounds, and I don't like. And it's not that it's just that I feel like there is a dehumanizing process that happens when we digitize it, and I think I'm not even sure if the ABBA thing, which they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on, is really going to work. But we'll see. I mean, at distance maybe, with what they're doing. But I think that when I think about sets, a lot of people go, "Well, let's do a green screen set," and I'm like, "How about not?" Like, how about we put wood back there, and create something that feels like you're there, and I think that's the, we want to kind of go the other direction. When we're already virtual, we want to create a counterweight that's analog, and feels like you're really part of it. So
I love that. I couldn't agree more. Yay.
Yeah. Last question.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota says, do you think a small venue under 80 people could run an event pay-per-view? And are there any models for this? If not, how could one make this work?
Go, Jeffrey, real quick.
There have been many in the past. I used to work at a venue. It was about 800 people, but we would have Bob Dylan came. We had a couple other bands play, and it made it very intimate and very very accessible. Sometimes they'd even come to practice at our venue. Yeah,
what I would do is I wouldn't put anybody in the audience. I put a big screen up that I'm going to put. It doesn't have to be a curved screen or anything special, but put up a big, like 18 foot wide, 16 foot wide, 24 foot wide screen that you're going to put people on it from the online audience, and then project into that or whatever you're going to do, and put it right in front of the band, and then get your, the things that you want to do and have them interact. And I think that you're going to find that that's let the bands interact with that online audience. The reality is, with 80 people, it won't. If you have a good set of bands, and again, repetition, you're going to end up with more and more viewers online than you'll ever have in person. Now you have to figure out the pay-per-view thing, as opposed to alcohol, which is the other pay-per-view, right? So the which is how most venues survive. But the main thing is that eventually that audience is going to get bigger. And I think that we always want to go back to, I think a lot of people do an event and 10 people show up and then they don't do another one, or they do an event and 15 people show up and they don't do another one. When you look at a TikToker who has 2 million followers or 10 million followers, start scrolling. Just scroll back to the beginning. And they went through hundreds of videos that 10 people saw or 5 people saw or 8 people saw. Like that, I loved researching that, because they're finding their way, they're figuring it out, and they're persistent. And those are videos that are hard to do, and they worked through it. I didn't have I did it with my kids a couple times, and I was like, okay, well, no one's watching it. And I went on to something else. I was like, I can't figure this out. And so there's like 6 of them up there, and the pretty fun ones, I will say. Anyways. I think that artists, the Beatles played 1,000 shows before they were the Beatles. Like 1,000 shows for people who especially at the beginning, probably didn't care who they were. In Germany and other places, they'd go into and they play all over the place. But before they were the Beatles, they played for nobody. And I think a lot of artists have a hard time getting, and artists that are seasoned or have done that before, played for 3 people or 5 people, as Todd was talking about here and there. But you have to be persistent. And I think that the artists that are building up these followings and everything else, they're persistent, and they just keep on, driving through that process. And so, and again, we hope that with office hours, we can start to help accelerate that a little bit to make sure that they're not in front of, 10 people. And Todd, your show is starting on the 12th. Is that right? Todd's got a show.
Yep. March 12th, every 2 weeks. And then if we get this conversation show, the weeks in between will be that.
That's amazing. And it's on us to make sure that Todd's got a crowd. So that, Todd's part of the family there. So we'll make sure that I have the times and stuff before next week, Todd, so I can make sure everybody knows it, because we want to definitely promote the heck out of it. So thank you. Yep, absolutely. And that is, the other thing to look for in online concerts is drafting, what I call drafting. You're finding other people around you that already have built a following, and how do you help them? Like that's the thing is, I helped Leo by showing up and giving him a free segment for years, every week, or, once a week for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I was doing a free segment for Leo. Knew that segment was handled and it would be handled well, and that I didn't, I do it at a high quality and everything else, and that helped. That set me up. Let's be clear. Like helping him produce his show is something that set the groundwork for anything else I wanted to do. I can do it. Like this group wouldn't exist if I didn't have a Twitter following, which was built on top of those things. So things to think about for concerts. But hopefully we can help. We'll keep on talking about this because I came out of the music industry. I'm dying to do lots of concerts. So and help the next artists, be the next big thing. So anyway, great. Thanks to our panelists for the great work, great answers, great conversation. Thanks to our producers who have asked a lot of great questions and kept the whole conversation going. Both the producers and the panelists are getting better. The producers are producing more questions. Panelists are answering them faster. And then in the second hour, we're just having great conversations. And so great work. And now we will jump into after hours. See you there. See, I didn't go.